Hi there, welcome to A.D.K Rock and Metal Network. My name is Kirk and this is episode 3 of Tales from the Underground. And today I'm joined by the bass player of the mighty metallic hardcore titans, Grief Ritual. And joining us in this discussion is Dave Marcavecchio. Before we begin, Dave, I always like to just ask, how's your day been so far? What have you been up to?
My day's been pretty fun so far. I've been working from home today, as you can see by my lovely home office surroundings. So yeah, this is a nice change of pace for today.
Yeah, we were saying, weren't we, off camera that we're mainly back in the office now. Actually, just before we start, do you find that you appreciate it even more now, being able to work from home, on those odd 1 or 2 days?
Yeah, it's nice to break it up a bit. Actually, it's as much as I like the workplace and the people I work with, it's sometimes you just want a day at home to get some stuff done, isn't it? So
Definitely. Yeah.
uh, did the dishes and some laundry on my lunch.
Yeah,
Great.
I've been doing that today as well. So I want to start then. I know you came to the band in late 2022, didn't you? So the band formed in 2018. And then there seems to be, everyone calls it like a reset, this 2022 EP Spiritual Disease, which got a lot of attention. Why do you think the band has survived when others playing this type of extreme claustrophobic music that takes a lot out of you might have split up, in those 7 years?
Mhm. Good question. I think it's in terms of, as you mentioned, there has been sort of several reinventions and reincarnations of the band sort of over that time. Sort of obviously some lineup changes as well. So there has been sort of that consistent membership of Jamie, our vocalist, and James, our drummer. I think with the lineup changes, that's kind of brought a stylistic change as well. So although there is the name as a consistency, it really is a very different band from the Grief Ritual of 2018 and 2019.
Yeah, it's like Napalm Death, isn't it? By the time
Yeah,
Gun comes out, there's no original members left in the band, is there? And they moved away from that, didn't they? And if anything, Barney Greenway and Shane, then people just assume they're original members because they're so synonymous with that group. But yeah, with this though, I mean, so do you want to tell us your story? You came in just after the release of that Spiritual Disease EP. How did the slot become available for you to come in on bass?
it's well up until well, I say up until I still am, but previously I played in the band Ascaris. I don't know if you're familiar. I wouldn't blame you if you're not. It's that was
Trying to think, the name does ring a bell.
yeah, it's very much blackened death metal, like full on kind of thing, and obviously from the same general scene as Grief Ritual. And we sort of had a little bit of a stall sort of around 2021 after sort of lockdown, and I was thinking like, oh well, I might look for another band to sort of play on the side, and it was just good luck and happenstance that they happened to be looking for a bass player at the same time that I was looking for another band to play bass in, really. And obviously I was familiar with Grief Ritual. We'd actually played with them in my previous band sort of once or twice on the same gig, so I knew who they were, they knew who I was, and it was just quite a fortuitous little collaboration, really.
Yeah, because so you're in Gloucester, aren't you? Gloucestershire, sorry.
Yeah, Gloucester, Cheltenham,
Cheltenham.
that sort of region. Yeah, it's
So you'll know that. Well, you know that band Shadow Flag. They're from there, aren't they? I think they've split up
yeah,
now.
yeah, pals with them. Good bunch.
Yeah, yeah. That was that 2020 album. It's a classic.
Mm.
I think it
Oh
was
yeah,
on. Was it a boutique record label called Clobber Records? I don't really hear of them now, but they put a few good albums out, and they were one of them. Shadow Flag. Yeah.
yeah. I think that was something that one of them was running kind of a very small scale little label, sort of like little tape releases and little CD releases and that. You're right. I've not heard anything off them for a while, but I don't know if they've just been winding down with it or what what have you. I know some of them are in the band Gorgon Christ now, who are
Yeah.
themselves busy. So that's
Yeah, they released that album and Justice for Balls, didn't they? Was it last year?
yes, yeah,
That's basically
that's a corker.
Celtic Frost playing punk music. My type. I loved it. I was like, whoa, this is amazing. But what about the so do you know that when this EP comes out, Spiritual Disease, somehow I missed this at the time. And at Scream Blast Repeat, we pride ourselves on knowing everything that's coming out. I don't know how I missed it. But I have noticed that your vocalist, Jamie Waggett, he was even invited to pen a piece for Kerrang magazine. This is when, they're an unsigned band. They've got this independent release out. What's the story behind that? They were invited to talk about, 12 years of Tory misrule.
I mean, I don't know specifically how that came about. Like I said, I wasn't quite in the fold when sort of that all happened. I know Jamie's a very driven individual, and I expect that the promotion side of Spiritual Disease, I imagine they were no slouching on that sort of. It would have been emailing everybody. It would have been putting all the feelers out there, sort of calling in every favour, hitting up every contact. So that's kind of been the case with the album as well to some degree. But yeah, the what we've achieved as sort of an unsigned band just through sheer force of will is quite impressive, I think. Not to big ourselves up too much, but I think there's something to be said for sort of putting the effort in and the networking side of it and messaging people and just pushing yourself out there as hard as you can.
Definitely. Yeah. And I always like to ask this question when I interview bands that have just signed to Church Road Records. When you joined, were those discussions underway, or did that only happen last year in 2024?
I think with Church Road, we'd obviously had a bit of contact with them before, but when we were writing and recording the album, there was sort of no label lined up. There was like nothing put on paper. I believe it was when we had some demos of the album up, because we were working with Jake Murray from Just Noise, who ended up producing the album. We were sort of working with him and demoing up a lot of things. And when we had sort of a handful of demos that were really good, I think it was James who was in touch with Justine from Church Road and sort of saying, "Hey, you open to me flinging some demos across?" And they liked them, and yeah, then they were open to the idea of putting the record out, which was fantastic. They've been a wonderful help. It's a great looking record.
Yeah, I mean, I can see why you'd be a perfect fit for them, because when I reviewed the album for Scream Blast Repeat, I always say to the reader, if you like this, I recommend these albums. And the ones I chose were Pupil Slicer, Mirrors, that new Harriet album, and then that other album that came out last year on Church Road Records, Hidden Mothers.
Yeah.
Emotion. You just fit so well into that. And Burner. In fact, I'm wearing a Burner t-shirt.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm not surprised, that they were open to receiving the demo. You're their type of music and my type of music. Whenever I see something like Church Road imprint, I'm like, I'm gonna like this.
Oh yeah. And again, they're all bands that you mentioned. I know for sure Pupil Slicer and Burner, they're all bands that we've sort of done little runs with or done shows with or sort of met along the road across the time. So we were pally and had done stuff with so many Church Road.
But yeah, you were saying that you're quite pally with a lot of those bands on the roster, and Harry Knott from Burner appears on the album, doesn't he? On your album came out on the 31st of January, Collapse, great record. I mean, the thing as well, when you look at that scene now, it all seems to revolve around Church Road Records, doesn't it? That's where all the promising bands that are on that cusp of metallic hardcore, black metal, extreme metal, death metal, punk, post metal. And there's actually, when I listen to Collapse, the new album, I do see that quite differently from the 2022 EP. I got a lot more of a like power violence with post metal and really low tuned guitars in that. Whereas on the 2022 EP, that's a bit more probably like your band. It's more black and death metal, isn't it?
Hmm.
With hardcore elements.
It's yeah, we really wanted to push it creatively a bit with a full length. Obviously, with an EP, you've got 4 tracks there, and I think each one of those 4 or 5 tracks rather, and I think they've all got a bit of an identity. But with a full length, we were very aware of not trying to do the same thing over and over, or sort of do the same tricks over and over. So it was definitely a bigger sort of reach of influences in there, and there were some things that we talked about putting in that. Again, Jake from Just Noise can't say enough good things about him. Sort of helped us realize and helped us sort of bring out like some of the more industrial things and some of the more sort of sample heavy kind of things, just to like really push the boat out a bit and sort of challenge ourselves as much as anything, really, to kind of bring in these new ideas and these new influences.
What's a rehearsal session like for Grief Ritual? Because the reason I ask, when I first heard the album, I was walking to the supermarket, so I'm streaming it on my phones. And after 2 songs, I've got visions in my head of being in a submarine, and then we need to plug this leak, and our lives are all at stake. And for 40 minutes, it's just extreme stress. You're really caught up in it. What's it like when you're doing the pre-production and writing these songs together?
Oh, I'd say about 40 minutes of extreme stress. No, it's yeah, it was very fun. The writing session, we would get together and just sort of knock out ideas, sort of build stuff together piece by piece. There was a lot of editing, like a lot of changes. I mean, there are demo versions of some songs of the album that I've got on my computer sitting around that maybe have 1 or 2 riffs of what the final product does. So it was some real meticulous fine tooth comb going through some songs, like, and some songs more than others took a bit more work to get there. Some kind of fell out fully formed, as it were, and barely needed anything doing to them. But that's the same with any sort of songwriting endeavor.
Yeah, another thing that I see as different from the 2022 EP, that was very introspective and existential angst and a lot of candid descriptions of mental health crisis, wasn't it? Whereas this one is more politically charged, and there's certainly some very strong anti-capitalist sentiments on this as well, aren't there? Can we actually just talk about a few songs on Collapse?
Of course.
So I love the first one, Spiral, and when I reviewed it, I said the down picking riffs are heavier than a car boot falling on a child's head. Probably a bit too extreme, but it is. It's so violent, isn't it? That. What's it like on bass when you're having to shadow the guitars and they're playing that kind of palm muted, formation?
I mean, it's a lot of fun. To be fair,
Using a plectrum, aren't you? Surely.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Big, thick 2 mm plectrum and just hammering away on a low A string. It's it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. We're conscious when writing some of the bass parts to just not have it twinning with the guitar all the time, kind of trying to add a bit of richness and a bit of texture in there. But live, especially when it's just some of the big, heavy, meaty open riffs, like there's nothing more fun. It's my favorite part of the whole thing. It's just going ham on the bass and throwing myself around the stage and all sorts. It's just cathartic, good, clean fun.
Yeah, you can feel like you're a member of Godflesh, can't you, when you're playing those kind of riffs as well?
Oh yeah,
Just with the
have that weight of everything behind you just kind of coming out. It's the most primal, raw reason to play music like this live. I think is just to feel that and just that sensation.
Definitely, yeah. And you're right, what you're saying there. You weren't just playing the root notes and following the guitars. And that's what I like specifically about genres like post metal and prog metal. That those genres, they always put a lot of emphasis, don't they, on the bass, weaving in and out, doing their own thing. I mean, probably the best example is probably Tool, isn't it? Adam Jones, quite as he never follows the guitar. If anything, the guitars are working around his
Yeah.
spindly bass lines, aren't they? Yeah. The other song I wanted to talk about, again, going back to the supermarket. So I'm looking at the shelves. I'm like, okay, which sausages should I buy? And I'm listening to Consumed, and then from nowhere it just says they drag us into war and have caused the climate crisis and privatized everything they can get their hands on. They're destroying our future. So you can imagine, I'm like, what the hell's going on here? When the song just like brings you back in and you're distracted. Is that Jamie that writes the lyrics?
Yes, yeah, he's a big driving force of the lyrics. It's very much all from the pen of Jamie, sort of all of that stuff. And it's interesting you mentioned the comparison with the EP, because that sort of echoes how I've always thought about it, that spiritual disease was sort of raging inwardly, and collapse is very much sort of raging outwardly
Yeah.
in the world. And I mean, in this country, we've just come off 14 years of everything sort of being crushed to death and squeezed, and sort of COVID on top of that, obviously. And I think a lot of people are looking for that catharsis and can relate to that kind of feeling, and just how everything's gone to pot a little bit. And obviously, the first few weeks of 2025 haven't done anything to sort of sway that. Really, it's I can't believe there were discussions around the time of the election in this country when Labour got in. There was sort of a very brief conversation of like, oh well, like if everything gets better, will everything we wrote about on the album still be relevant? And yeah, like 8 weeks into 2025, yes, it is. Oh my god, yes.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely agree with you on that.
Yeah, yeah.
We've not seen much change. Tell you one song that does stand out, Swine, which is towards the end of the album, and there's a line in that, we don't exist for them to abduct. That's surely talking about Wayne Couzens, isn't it? That
I
local Met Police officer who abducted that girl. And
yeah,
then
that is explicitly a reference to that, I believe. Yeah, it's
just stands out, doesn't it? Where again, you listen to it, it's like, what did he just say? It's like I was like, I'm gonna go on Bandcamp. What are the lyrics for this?
yeah. But again, it's all part of sort of the broader message of that song, and I know that's something that something that we all care about deeply. And yeah, it's unfortunately in some cases it's the reality of it, and that can't be shied away from or kind of swept under the rug. Like, you have to kind of shine a spotlight on these things and address them if anything's going to happen, if there's going to be any sort of meaningful change.
Sometimes you don't feel that you just need to protest anyway. I'll give you an example. In the 70s, during the reign of the Yorkshire Ripper, you'd have women going on marches saying, we should be able to walk around at night. It should be the type of place where we can feel safe. Now, we know you can't change human behavior, and you're always going to have a small minority of people who are psychopaths, and you're never going to be able to eliminate murder. But that doesn't mean it's futile what they're doing. They're going out there to say, look, even if we don't know what can change this, we need to go out there and make it clear it's unacceptable. Do you think that alone at least achieves anything?
I think there's with that sort of thing, I think there is a sort of comfort in catharsis and that kind of coming together as a group and sort of being unified in that sort of collective feeling of being mad about a thing, basically, whether it's something like the Yorkshire Ripper or sort of police violence. I think sometimes it is a comfort just to know that you're not alone, and almost seeking that reassurance from your community that, like, oh no, like, other people are with me on this. That's good. That's a reassuring thing. And I think it's a very human reaction as well. I think it's a very human reaction to sort of the unpleasant and horrible things in life that can happen, that these awful things can happen, but ultimately bring people together at the same time, you know?
Yeah, because after that Sarah Everard murder by this disgraceful, diabolical PC, Wayne Couzens, I remember having a conversation because women, understandably, went out and protested. And the conversation was from one angle was almost like, what's the point in that? You cannot eliminate murder. But my argument was, well, it's not just a case of being needing to be seen doing something, is it? It's to actually be outraged. Sometimes that in itself needs to be manifested, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
And your music does that as well. And I think that's why I like a lot of post metal and metallic hardcore. And I probably listen to that a lot more now than death metal and black metal, because with your music and Burner and bands like that, it's like it scorches your face. You just cannot turn off. You can't get away from it. Whereas I think if you put on a lot of death metal these days, after 3 songs, I can zone out. It's not holding my attention. Whereas your music is very confrontational, isn't it?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think it's things worth being confronted about, really. And it's definitely, you know, these are things that affect all of us in our lives, and we all have been kind of touched by that. And I think we all carry these frustrations and these resentments of everything that's been going on. And with this record, if the only goal of this record is kind of giving voice to that frustration and kind of verbalizing that frustration, then job done. Really, that's, you know, it would be one thing if we had sort of a manifesto full of solutions to all these problems, but I think at the same time you just have to address that kind of emotional need in the present and just sort of fucking vent about it, you know?
Yeah, I think with art, the important thing is just to be asking the questions, isn't it?
Yeah,
You're not expected to be providing or delivering solutions, but just asking questions. That's what you want from a good novel, to be honest, as
yeah,
well. You know, an existential novel, asking questions. Same with this. It's not your job to be pontificating and be dogmatic and saying these are the solutions. Good if you can put them into lyrics that are
yeah.
poignant and not overly dogmatic, you know, in the way that they're delivered. But I actually want to turn this on its head. So your music is claustrophobic and quite violent. So let's imagine you incorporate some non-metal and hardcore and non-hardcore influences on your next record. Which artist would you take inspiration from to learn how to build these new textures to your music?
Oh, that's a very good question. That's a very good question indeed. I think there's a lot to be gained from. Have we frozen? No, we haven't frozen again. I was worried we did for a second. I think there's a lot to be gained from a lot of the current. This might be an odd answer, but a lot of the current sort of like pop artists out there, like again, some of the real mainstream kind of stuff. And it's one thing I kind of admire about a lot of artists like that is how they're sort of not constrained by genre tropes so much. You can have one singer bringing out completely different sounding songs, like drawing bits from all sorts of things, and you know, for maybe for the next album and beyond, like, would be averse to bringing in some stuff like that. I'm always a fan of some clean vocals, and as you know, there's like one or two sections on the EP with that. Not so much on the album, but I think that would be something to bring in. And I'm always just writing with the notion of nothing's off the table. I don't think. I think there can be a place for everything. I mean, if you can have Speed busting out a flute in the middle of a breakdown, there's no rules anymore. I think we're a lot less beholden to genre conventions than we used to be, sort of 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, and Grief Ritual is a melting pot of really extreme metal anyway, isn't it? There's if you like post metal, if you like hardcore, if you like even, you know, contemporary thrash metal, grindcore, you're gonna love Green Ridge. It gives you everything that you want in there. But yeah, I mean, I'm the same. I'm no longer a musician, but I spend most of my every day listening to a new album. Most of them are metal albums, but it's helped me appreciate other forms of music. So like this week, I've been listening to quite a lot of, believe it or not, George Michael records. You know, the ones that sold millions, Faith
Oh
and
yeah, yeah,
Without Prejudice, Volume One. And my dad used to play them when we were younger. I was listening to them now from this perspective, like the songwriting is incredible. There's a song on the 1990 album called Cowboys and Angels, and there's three choruses in it. They're all monumental as well, just following each other. You're like, what the hell? What's going on here? So yeah, I just love doing that. And you obviously are the same, aren't you? Jazz, pop, prog, whatever.
yeah. I mean, I've been for example, I've been on a real Gary Newman kick like the last week or so. I don't know what it was. I don't know what said. I think I just had like a best of in my car, and I stuck that on, and then when I got home, started like deep diving a bit more. And yeah, that's been the micro obsession for this week is Gary Newman's discography and but again, how he sort of starts off like new wave and quite electronic, almost goes a bit like trying to do a bit of a Bowie in like the 80s, like a bit more jazzy, a bit more slap bassy, that sort of thing. And then in the mid 90s goes like, nah, I'm going to be Nine Inch Nails now. And it's just, yeah, just fantastic discography he's got. It's completely bonkers. It's,
Yeah, I had a bit of a moment, a Gary Newman moment last year. I went through a phase again in between reviewing all these albums of Scream as Repeat. I thought, go on, now let's go and listen to some of the because I really love Depeche Mode, and I was like, well, let's listen to some more synth-based music. And I went for Tubeway Army and those other stuff, and you had some
yeah,
great songs. I've not gone through the 80s part where you said he goes more Bowie, and then I know about him reinventing himself as this like hard edge industrial artist as well. And another one that I got into last year was that the band Japan.
oh yeah, yeah,
They were like a really crap, I guess you'd say, glam rock band to begin with. And then they do this 1983 album called Tin Drum, which was a game changer for pop and electronic music. And I remember hearing that in its entirety last year and thinking, this is incredible. And just the gem, like you said there with your Gary Newman kick. It's just great, isn't it? That all this is at our fingertips now.
yeah. And I think that's a big driving force to kind of the death of genre. Really is that kids making music now, they've got access to everything all of the time, so it's not quite as driven from how you'd have like every band in the early 2000s was kind of influenced by like Nirvana or Alice in Chains or Guns N' Roses because that's what they were all listening to now. But now like a 20-30-year-old song could go viral on TikTok and then suddenly that artist gets a second wind. And that's bonkers how that can happen. And regrettably, it gives us the Creed renaissance sometimes.
Yeah, so I saw someone wearing their t-shirt the other day. It's like, well, okay. Yeah, I think they've reformed, haven't they? But you're right what you're saying there about genres, because I mean, I'm 42 now, and even in those early 2000s, if you listen to indie rock, you didn't listen to new metal or grunge. There was a clear chasm, wasn't there, between all that, and that's disappeared now, which is a good thing. I mean, I'll give you another example. In America, a lot of people see Oasis as like an alternative rock band, whereas
Yeah,
in this country, they're seen as an indie band, aren't they? A Britpop or, you don't really get someone who listens to Slayer listening to Oasis. So you certainly didn't in the late 90s. That probably is possible now and wouldn't
yeah,
be seen as ridiculous.
definitely. I mean, that was definitely me in my 20s, Slayer and Oasis. But I think I saw them both in 2009, possibly. but yeah, no, it can only be a good thing, and that's not to say the next Grief Ritual album is going to be a ska album or anything like that.
Maybe a Mr. Bungle album.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I wouldn't object to that.
I'd be looking forward to it if that's where you're going.
Yeah, we'll get Scotty in and it'll be great. It'll be. But yeah, who knows what the next album could be? It could be a. Yeah.
It could be a black and death metal album like your previous band.
Absolutely, yeah. Could start bringing in more blast beats. Can see us in the first writing section of guys. Have you heard of Gary Newman?
Yeah. And do you know what a blast beat is? Of course you do. Well, we're going to put them together.
Absolutely, yeah. No,
I always like to just ask as well, at this point, because you've got this album out. Sorry, I think I interrupted you there as well. I think you're about to say something.
No, don't worry about it.
I always just like to, when we're bringing it, what does the next step of progress in Grief Ritual's career look like, ideally, to you?
Okay, well, I think definitely for this year and a lot of early next year, we are really focusing on trying to push the record. There's a lot of shows sort of coming up, doing sort of Incineration in May down in London, doing a little jaunt with Inhuman Nature at the end of May, and then 2,000 Trees in July, sort of on our doorstep, which would be quite nice. There's some other stuff in the pipeline, sort of coming for the end of the year, and hopefully some other stuff in the pipeline for early 2026. It's just going to be a case of keeping that momentum, I think. I think in terms of the next record, in terms of writing, I know that's something we've discussed about getting our heads down pretty soonish and sort of starting to knock some ideas around for that. Obviously, I'll noodle on a guitar at home every other day. I know Chris is the same, so I'm sure we're collecting a scrapbook full of riffs as we speak, potentially. And yeah, it's just going to be trying our damnedest to keep that momentum up. Really, it's we've sort of hit the ground running with this album a little bit, and we want to keep that going as much as possible.
Yeah, Incineration Festival, that'll be a highlight one. I noticed Triptychon, Decapitated, and Blood Incantation.
Blood Incantation.
Wow.
Cryptopsy as well, personally. I'm very excited for. Like, I love them to death. One of my favourite bands ever. So to be on that poster sort of with them as well, that's a dream come true, really.
If you look at it, though, it just shows you, doesn't it, the dominance now of Church Road Records, because you've got Cops on there, you've got Ren, you've got, I think, Underdark, are they on it?
Yeah.
So, I mean, all these great bands, I class you all as contemporary, because, Church Road, basically, it's kind of replaced the void left by Holy Roar, hasn't it, records, and every time they put out, and when I look now, like you were saying there, you're touring with Inhuman Nature, thrash band on Church Road Records. We're getting close now where you could probably do a whole package tour, a showcase of just Church Road Records bands, couldn't you? I mean, the 6 of you and just go tour Europe.
I think Church Road Fest 2026, I think, make it happen. We should do that.
Definitely.
Big all-dayer, just everyone plays. That'll be good. That'll be amazing. That would be
the entire roster. Yeah, exactly. Because I mean, that band Cops, they're good, aren't they? Are they from Bristol?
I believe so. Yeah.
Because they play they've got a bit of shoegaze melody in their black metal, haven't they? It's very sorrowful but aggressive music.
Yeah, it's a great label, honestly, and I say that not just because our album's out on there, but it really is sort of I think in the UK scene especially, it is kind of like a seal of quality, and that was definitely something that made us want to pursue them. I mean, they were when we were discussing about how we wanted to put the record out, they were the first choice, kind of, really, for us. They were like, first choice, Church Road puts it out. Like, if they say no, then we'll look at someone else. But that's the priority, is to get them on side. So I'm so glad it turned out the way it did.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a platform as well, hasn't it, onto the bigger labels? Because like Harriet are now on Century Media, aren't they? And Svalbard are on Nuclear Blast, aren't they? So if you look
Yeah,
at, like, I mean, they're the like I guess you when I say the word elite, I don't mean that in any negative way, but they
oh
are
yeah,
the big brands, aren't they? You know,
yeah,
if you're on Nuclear Blast or Century Media or Napalm Records, that's about as that is as high as it
that's
goes, and that is the seal of approval. But with Church Road, I was going to ask that actually before we wrap it up. With a deal like that, I mean, it is mainly the seal of approval, isn't it? I guess you're not really going to get support with tour support. Are they paying for the pressing of the vinyl? Would they be paying for the studio recording for the next record? Can you expect those things in a modern record deal?
yeah. I mean, without going too much into how the sausage is made, it did make a lot of things much easier from a financial standpoint. Especially, I'd say the big one really was sort of the actual printing of the records, because that, for a run of a couple of hundred records these days, you're looking at a couple of £1,000 easily. And of course, the printing plants, they're all chalked up. So trying to approach them as like an independent artist, you're kind of put to the back of the queue a bit. Like, yeah, 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 mate. We'll get round to that. We'll print that. Don't worry.
In
But
12 months' time.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. Just get the pre-sales ready for 5 years' time. Yeah, it's fine. But obviously, coming from a label that carries a little bit more weight and that existing relationship there, it has. It's opened a lot of doors as well. So there's been sort of like non-financial kickbacks to it as well. As you said, that kind of seal of approval on there. I believe we were it was either January or the February subscription sort of album for their kind of like record club subscription that they have. So that brought a lot of people on sides that maybe we wouldn't have reached in the traditional means, sort of exposing them to our music and things like that. And I think a lot of people do see, oh, this band's on Church Road, like, oh, there must be something good there. There must be something going on then. So,
That's how it works with me. You're right. And I remember Justin contacting me at the end of December. She's like, "You need to listen to this band," and she's not pushy at all, is she, Justine? And
oh, no,
I
no.
mean, obviously, I'm played to say we're a great band, and you only have to look at the T-shirts she wears, even if you've never heard Employed to Serve, to know that she's got a great taste in music. And she was probably more excited about Grief Ritual than almost any that I can remember. Like getting in touch with me in advance, like I can't. She said, like, I can't wait for you to hear this record. You're gonna love it. But you're right. When you go on Bandcamp now, I just these have signed to Church Road Records. Gotta go and check them out. First
Yeah.
thing I do.
And it's nice to still have that in this day and age. I know a lot of people talk about that sort of like labels are dead and that there's not much they can do for bands, and we've seen that kind of middle market kind of shrink and kind of vanish a bit. So I think it's important that something like that still exists. Kind of sort of the last vestige of like the old school music industry,
Yeah.
really.
I call it cluster effect as well, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
And I wasn't joking. We are not far away from 5 bands going out and touring Europe, and it's all Church Road record labels. They put it together, our Church Road Fest. It's got to be the next step in the evolution, hasn't it, of that label?
I mean, I'm not trying to put ideas out there, but Justine, if you're watching, it's just saying, could be fun. It could be.
Well, they tell you what, they're taking on a lot. They're now handling the affairs. I think they're now handling the press for Prosthetic Records as well. When I was speaking to her, so I mean, what a label that is.
Oh yeah,
Hands on that. That's another one, isn't it? Where if a band signs to Prosthetic Records, straight away I'm like, right, this is going in the review calendar.
yeah. Ears prick up, like, oh, okay, okay,
Yeah.
something going on here.
Well, for our viewers, I should just let you know, Grief Rituals, it is the debut album, debut full length. It's called Collapse, and it came out on the 31st of January, 2025. As you know by now, it was released by Church Road Records. We spent most of the interview talking about how we love the label.
They may have missed that bit. It's
Yeah. Shall I repeat it?
it's on Church Road record.
Yeah, in fact, let's just look at this
Yeah.
beautiful 12-inch vinyl.
Oh,
Is it a sleeve vinyl or is there an inlay to it? Does it open up?
it is a single sleeve.
I love them. They're fine. Yeah.
Very nice. Very nice. Lovely artwork. Again, it's our vocalist Jamie who's done all the artwork as well. So it's a real sort of DIY, real sort of DIY effort, real sort of DIY ethos gone into it. All done in house, kind of.
See, if I saw that in the 90s, I'd be like, oh, this is an industrial metal album. You know, like Godflesh, that type of artwork, isn't it? That would gets my attention as well. Yeah, looks beautiful. I can see it's your pride and joy as well that you're in a band, you've got a 12-inch vinyl album out, released on a prestigious boutique, metal label. 2025 started off quite well on a personal level.
It's a cliche, but it is a dream come true. Really,
you want to see your own record on the shelf, don't you?
Yeah, if I could have gone back and told my 13, 14-year-old self all this, he'd be bouncing off the walls.
Yeah.
And as you said, yeah, we went into sort of our local HMV in Cheltenham, and sure enough, it's there on the shelf, and that is fucking surreal.
That's it. That's as good. You know that you've achieved. You've created a piece of art for public consumption, haven't you? That's got it's been legitimized. HMV are stocking it, and like you said, as a 14-year-old, if someone had said your album's going to be in the metal section, you'd be like, okay, will it?
Yeah, no, it's been absolutely mental, and it's just the beginning.
No, I believe you. It feels like that, doesn't it? After the 2022 Spiritual Disease EP, I know everyone's calling it a reset. It was. This album's out now. To me, I get that feeling as an observer and as a listener and a music reviewer that this is only the beginning. There's a lot more to come from the band.
Oh yes, yeah. Well, we will try our best.
Yeah, no, I'm sure you will, because you're all nice people. But it's been an absolute pleasure having you on episode 3 of Tales from the Underground.
Yeah, likewise, had a great time.
Yeah, I'm sure that there's a lot of people out there who listen to Grief Ritual, and it's not easy to find out who's actually in the band. You don't make that understandable. It's not about, oh, these are the band members. But even if this interview just gives a bit more insight, into a day in the life of a member of Grief Ritual.
Oh yeah, the exotic, glamorous life
in a band called Grief Ritual.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, and I might try and get tickets to that Incineration Festival. I live in Stevenage, so
okay.
And I'm Celtic Frost are my all-time favorite metal band.
So yeah,
Triptychon, Tom G Warrior. I've no excuse.
Yeah, definitely.
And Decapitated. Come on, we're talking about Vork here, the best riff meister there is.
Well, I'm seeing Decapitated and Cryptopsy in Cardiff kind of 3 days after Incineration as well. So that'll be a nice epilogue to that. So.
Awesome. Well, thanks very much. Really appreciate it.
We'll see you there. We'll have a drink. It'll be good.
Yeah, drinks are on me.
Absolutely. I'll hold you to that. That's